as you might know by now, I moved from Minneapolis, Minnesota to Portland, Oregon in September. It has been a crazy couple of months, but I am so excited to have found this apartment and to have the chance to move over here to the Pacific Northwest. I'm so excited to be in this area, and when I found this apartment with this kitchen and all of these lights, I was so excited. However, it is so incredibly different from my old kitchen. There is way less storage, so I've had to invest in some other shelving things like this one to keep all of my chocolates and macaron supplies. I also got a half-speed rack to help me organize everything, and while I'm filming, to move everything about. And now that I am finally all set up, it is time to do a kitchen test and also a filming test. When I was in my old kitchen, every part of the macaron making process and filming process I could do with my eyes closed. I knew every angle I liked. I knew every little quirk of my oven and kitchen and how to make things run smoothly. But now in this new kitchen, I have a new setup. I am so grateful to have all these windows and have a different setup that maybe is better for filming, but it is still new to me. So I need to do some oven testing to figure out what works. So let's get set up and make a batch of macarons. So I am going to be using the French method macaron shell recipe that I always use for all of my French method macarons in my home kitchen. I decided to use some pumpkin and rose colorants just because it is fall and I wanted to do something that looked a little bit seasonal, but otherwise everything is exactly the same. What I am looking for here as I go about this recipe, again, I am looking into my filming because content creation is so important to me for YouTube and filming horizontally for Instagram and filming vertically, and then also with my photography setup as I'm creating more and more ebooks and digital resources. I need to find out what works best on a sunny day, on a cloudy day, all of that. So a lot of the beginning part of this bake was just me figuring out all of my different angles. Then the most important step in a new kitchen, whether it is a brand new kitchen or a new to you kitchen, whatever it is the oven. And all the parts of making macarons revolving around the oven, especially the rest time, the bake time, and the bake temperature. Now, as you've seen out my window, when I was making this very first batch of macarons, and I'm not lying to you here, this truly was the first batch of macarons in this kitchen. It is a sunny day. It was pretty low humidity, and I just kept everything as I would. However, if you noticed earlier in the video, my new oven, it's a GE oven, I'm not sure about the exact model, does not have a convection oven setting. It is just a regular oven. I had the choice to bake or broil, and that's about it. In my previous kitchen, I did have a convection oven. It was an LG oven, and there were a lot more settings, and I could do different things. So usually in my past oven, I would go to 300 degrees on my convection setting, and I would bake for 17 minutes, and that was perfect. However, I know from using other ovens, both in Portland before, when I've been baking in my brother's kitchen when I'm here, or when I was in France, when I was in Japan, and baking macarons in a home or apartment kitchen, if I was baking from an oven like the one I have now, I usually start at a lower temperature and increase my time. So for me, as I am going about making my first batch of macarons, I already know that for my oven test, I'm not going to start at 300 degrees Fahrenheit. You absolutely can start there, but just from my past experience, I feel like it's going to be better for me to start a little bit lower and then increase that time on my bake. So more like 280, 285, and for about 20 minutes. then I'll check them and see how that works. Now, if I am just visiting a kitchen or if I'm going somewhere and I'm baking for a couple weeks and that's it, I will do one macaron test and then call it a day. And if it works okay, even if it's not perfect, I'll kind of just leave it at that setting and get by. However, this is going to be my kitchen for a long time, so I really want to make sure it's perfect. So again, I'm starting with my regular French macaron recipe. I am going to get this into an oven at about 280 degrees. I'm going to start at about 20 minutes. And then I am going to play around a little bit after that. I'm going to try to increase the temperature. I'm going to play around with the bake time, bake it a little bit less, bake it a little bit more, look inside those shells, fill them, see what the texture is, all of that. So even though I am mostly showing you this first trial, after the first trial and after I see how that goes, I will adjust and keep playing around with all of the settings. And this is why, as in so many of my previous videos, and I try in my ebooks as well and other things to say, depending on your kitchen, depending on your environment, depending on your tools, you might not be able to do the same exact thing that I do, and that is completely normal. And so for myself, as I have moved across the country to a new environment, to a new kitchen, even though I am a professionally trained pastry chef who makes macarons for a living, I am still doing all of these same tests that I encourage you to do in your kitchen. So now that I've got my macarons finished and piped here, I'm adding on my sprinkles, and I've decided to let these rest for my normal amount of time. For me, that is about 20 to 25 minutes before that first tray goes in the oven, and I've piped all of my macaron batter. I did a batch with 100 grams of egg whites, so that's 2 trays for me. And now these are going to rest and go into the oven one after the other. If I'm making a batch that has only 2 trays, I usually just bake them one after the next because I find the results are just really nice and it's okay, it works out that way. In my previous oven, I had great success with baking 2 trays at a time, but I don't want to start off that way in my new kitchen. I'm really just testing like the perfect conditions for 1 tray here. So after resting into the oven, they go. And tray number 1, massive success. Tray number 2 ended up having 2 macarons, I think, at the very back edge that were a little bit lopsided, but all in all, the shells turned out really nice. The bottoms were maybe not quite as shiny and smooth as I usually get, which was a little bit bizarre for me. The bake time was much longer, so I was on 280 and I ended up baking for about 24 minutes, which was very unusual for me, but that seems like what these macarons wanted in this oven, so that's okay. I got these filled, and after having a very successful bake, I had a lot of confidence to just dive into the rest of my baking. I went about my weekend, I prepped a bunch more batches, and I was ready to start filming a bunch of videos for YouTube the next week. The thing is, we've hit fall in Portland and it started to rain. And when it started to rain and I had my macarons out, this happened. I put my batch of macs into the oven and oh my God, I have never had so many lopsided macarons. I never, ever get lopsided macarons. So I panicked. It kept happening over and over. So I rushed off to Crate & Barrel, bought a small convection oven / air fryer, self-soothed by looking through books in Barnes & Noble and getting a pumpkin spice latte at Starbucks, and then I brought my new convection oven home. This is a mini countertop oven, and I was so worried. I knew humidity was playing a role, but I also had a lot of concern about the oven itself, so I just wanted to have this as a backup so I could dive into my filming and content creation again with success. Yes, it is a much smaller oven, but for small batch sizes, for recipe testing and content creation, that is not a problem. Also, to be fair, I was seriously considering buying a nice air fryer to have, so this just sped along that process. As I was preparing for my next bake, I had some new plans. So number one, whenever you get a new oven, you definitely have to turn it on and kind of heat treat the oven, burn off any weird smells, and it does smell. So I did that first. And then for my macarons, I realized humidity was a problem. I ordered a dehumidifier. It hadn't come yet, but I realized what I needed to do was for now use the no rest method for my macaron shells. So I am going to have a new batch, my same recipe, same tips and tricks, everything like usual, but I am going to pipe the macaron shells one tray at a time and immediately get them into my oven. With all of these things in mind, I am going to show you one tray that's going directly into my mini convection oven. This one, because it is a convection setting, I do have a higher temperature. I'm going to go at 290 this time. And then I am also going to do a no rest method in my larger oven, but keep those same lower temperature. I'm going at 280 for 25-26 minutes. So I made sure to preheat my oven before I pipe the macarons, usually in Minnesota and with a much drier climate there. After I finished piping my batch of macarons, then after I was starting to rest them, then I would turn my oven on. So my oven wasn't just always on. But here, because I want to use the no rest method this time, I do not want to have the opportunity for the sugar in all of the macaron shells absorb the humidity from the air. And again, once I get my dehumidifier, I do think that will play a role, but if you are experiencing the extreme lopsided shells like you saw on that tray of pink macarons, and if you live somewhere with high humidity, as I now do, that could be influencing your bake. So I'm going to not rest these, get them into my oven that is ready to go, and I'm going to do a tray in the convection oven and in my regular oven at the same time. I was so nervous, and after a week of macaron fails, I was so relieved to see finally a perfect batch of macarons come out of both my new mini convection countertop oven and my regular oven itself. I had just a couple little weird macarons at the very edge of the one in my oven, but all in all, again, I still don't have a dehumidifier for my kitchen. I do think this was a success. The moral of the story is do not give up. It is completely normal to have to do a lot of testing for your macarons, even if you are an experienced baker. And it is always good to, one thing at a time, try to narrow down the culprit and find a solution for your macarons. And it doesn't necessarily mean you need to change your recipe or that you have a bad recipe. If you have failed like 10 times, okay, maybe the recipe is an issue, but I am using the same exact recipe I always had. And as you see here at the end with those green macarons and with my orange macarons, they are still successful here in Portland. I just had to find some new solutions for my rest time, for my bake time, and for my bake temperatures. I really hope this look into my new kitchen and my exploration of my kitchen was helpful to you. If you have any questions, let me know down below. I'm so excited now that my move is over with to get into some new bakes and new flavors with you. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye!